Expanding our knowledge through those amongst us is a privilege we take for granted. Join me as we explore the minds of our fellow beings to unlock their knowledge for ourselves. It is time for a guest entry. But first, a quick disclaimer. Most of the guests I've had on were recorded through Discord due to us being long distance. If the quality dips, it's due to my connection. But I hope each of these conversations brings you new knowledge of the creative and cultural arts. From exploring the core, we now venture out deep into the planar unity, into another multiverse where the association of Ishtar resides. I'd like to welcome a new guest who have had the privilege of joining on his podcast. It's only natural that he comes on here to discuss his stories that take steampunk storytelling to a whole new level. So without further ado, here is Bonsart of Retrofuture. Today, I have on Bonsart, an author, historian, producer of an expansive steampunk multiverse called the Association of Ishtar, and much more where that came from. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. But first, one remark. You're roboting.
Oh, I'm roboting.
Okay, now it seems to be gone.
Okay. It might be because of my connection. And also because I'm a robot in disguise, so.
Anyway, well, thank you for having me on.
So my focus here for Arthadian anthologies is on my ever-expanding universe, the core realms. This is where our works kind of align in the fact that your entire storytelling venture revolves around your own multiverse. If you can, I'd like to know what started you on this venture and how did the Association of Ishtar come to be?
All right, so that's a long history. So this year is my 10th year. I've been active in steampunk. I started blogging on that topic 10 years ago. Now I started Radio Retrofuture 7 years ago. I think yesterday officially. I got a mention from YouTube.
Ooh.
So hooray!
Nice.
And I started blogging on the question, what is steampunk? And more importantly, what sets it apart from other forms of geek culture and literature? And so I had this blog called Tupperware Steampunk. That was the first one. And that eventually grew into my current YouTube channel, Radio Retrofuture. And I started making a series that I intended to be like the go-to series when people wanted to learn about steampunk, the Steampunk Beginner's Guide, which is now like nearly 20 episodes, somewhere around that number. And I wanted to, analyze what makes steampunk different from other subgenres of science fiction in particular.
Yeah.
And that led to a number of questions regarding, making steampunk characters, writing steampunk settings. But I wasn't a writer myself. Like, I dabbled in writing. In Dutch. I kind of wrote a sci-fi fantasy I wanted to write. I made the mistake of starting with a book, of course, like many aspiring writers do.
Yeah.
But I quickly learned that it was more productive for me to write short stories. I learned more from doing that. That kind of, in parallel to my series, I should say, I was also doing my costume group. And we came up with Ragtag, the 113th Ragtag, the Regiment Anachronistic Grenadiers Tactical Assault Group. And the idea behind it was originally that there were all these steampunks on the fairs. We didn't really have a convention culture at that point in the Netherlands, and they all had like these big guns, and they had no opponents. So we kind of like created the like their opponents basically. Eventually, we also started doing kids activities. And one of them was a storm course. One of our members was a World War II enthusiast, and they had like all this decor, like dragons' teeth, concertinas, the rounded barbed wire, sandbags, and all that stuff. So we built a whole parkour out of that with Nerf guns. So we'd be shooting at kids, and they'd be shooting at us.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, also exhausting. And and that kind of like led to this invention called the Paradox Engine, which allowed the soldiers of the ragtags to come back alive again every time. So they became like these video game characters in their own lore, so to speak. And and then that kind of led to the whole multiverse idea, because it was the idea that these soldiers would respawn by teleporting versions of themselves from somewhere in a multiverse and be replaced by another version of themselves, basically, and be completely brainwashed and be turned into a ragtag. That's the idea.
Yeah.
And that kind of like turned out this world of the multiverse, essentially. But I never got around to actually writing out the lore. And meanwhile, I was working on the Steampunk Beginner's Guide with the character of Dankard Lexicon that I do in my series, which is the narrator, or well, whatever you want to call him. And he originated from my old blog, Tupperware Steampunk. And I wanted to do... I was doing research. So I was doing interviews with people active in steampunk, like what inspired them, like what is the source of steampunk, rather than saying, Jules Verne is steampunk, which makes no sense.
Yeah, like not focusing on a specific writer or author, but focusing on the entire genre in general, and finding like all the different people and how it all
one of the things that
works together.
Yeah, well, one of the things that annoyed me most about the discussion about steampunk, like that using words such as steampunk is projection. I originally actually posted a blog on Minds about this, and why I think the whole edition of punk is actually quite terrible for literature. But that's a different discussion. But there was like, all these writers are steampunk. This is steampunk. That is steampunk. A box with a gear glued on it is steampunk. That's why I called my first blog Tupperware Steampunk, because like everything could be steampunk. If you wanted it to,
as long as you put a gear on it.
Yeah. Well, not even that. It was kind of like the problem I was trying to solve. And so the creation of Dankard Lexicon, and people started to immediately conflate Dankard Lexicon with ragtag. Because that's how humans are.
Yeah.
And so Dankard Lexicon is ragtag now. People still call us ragtag, even though we have not really done anything with the concept for years now. But people really like that idea of a group of uniformed soldiers, and doing the kids activities and stuff. That really left a big impression on the convention scene here in the Netherlands. But I mean, the conventions kind of like died away. The Voldemort virus came about, that kind of like spearheaded my attempt to start writing again. And I was like looking for a concept that would like. Because, one of the things that steampunks really seem to be into, and role players and that type of people, is really building worlds. So the idea was, okay, a multiverse that has multiple worlds, and, characters from these different worlds could meet each other and play that out. So that's kind of like where that whole idea came from. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, well, I need a first story, because like I said, with the whole book thing, I'm against people starting with building a world, and then eventually years down the line they finally start making stories. And I already knew at that moment that was not gonna work. I wanted to be read. So and people generally don't care about your world concept. So I started with the same friend I mentioned who was into World War II reenactment.
Yeah.
He also did home radio stuff. And when we were younger, we would sit behind his home radio set. And we would go after number stations, which is the Secret Service way of communicating with aides in the field. And, that for some reason, that I always had this weird fascination for old radios when you would be sitting in the car and, you were bored or, you wanted some distraction, you turn on the radio. Now everything is like pre-programmed and one push of a button and you're to a next radio channel. But when I was growing up, you had to like manually dial those things, and you would hear all these strange noises coming over the radio. So I had this weird fascination with it. I think one of the characters from Deadwood said it best, voices coming from nowhere. That idea, and that kind of led into the creation of a character called the Call Girl, who is this assassin, this multidimensional assassin hunting the protagonists, and those protagonists then became the associates of Ishtar. But because it had to be related to the numbers that she was speaking out, the associates of Ishtar all got numbers to kind of fit with that story. And that's how the whole series started, with that one short story, and the explanation for the numbers is based on that concept. And that finally led to my first book, which is The Wrench in the Machine, that has the Call Girl as the antagonist. And
And when did you publish The Wrench in the Machine?
Last year, September.
Okay. And people can find it on Amazon and your websites too.
Yeah. You can order it. You can email. I have my email on the store page right now because those store modules cost money. But people can email me and I will send it to them. Including the ebooks. In which case, I will also add some more digital content with that. And continuing with that, soon we'll also have a coloring book on Kickstarter.
Yeah, you have some pretty good artists. One of them, Neutron Boar, is one that I commission as well for character art for like this podcast specifically. For many of my audience members will know the character art for each Reborn in Power trilogy that I have for each saga. I basically use Neutron Boar, who is an awesome artist on Minds.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I think I met him on Minds. I'm not entirely sure if that's where I met him, but I think so. And he did two pieces of art of mine. One was Associate 321, who's a character in the book, and another one, which is Subject 09, which is a character I hope to do more with in the future.
So you also have a full catalog of content, like not only found on YouTube but also on your own storytelling blog. Between the videos and the written entries, how do you tie the narrative threads between the two? Do you put more emphasis on one more than the other, or are there different methods you take for each medium?
The videos are actually versions of video versions of the short stories on the website, with the exception of the arcology one. The arcology video was made because of our camp, or we have this decor, and I kind of like wanted to have like an introduction to that world so people could watch the video, and I also wanted to experiment with collaborating with artists and that type of stuff. Some volunteered, some I paid. We also got acquainted with a professional photographer, Martijn Hogeboom, and he also made a lot of photos for us with some friends of his. some beautiful photos that are included in the video, which we're really proud of. I still post them to this day. And yeah, and so, but it was also, again, to bring that world to life. And yeah, I hope that the problem is mostly time. I'm a one-man team, so to speak.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah, so I'm kind of hoping to find more people to do, but that brings me into something that was proposed to me today. There's a new streaming service called Subgenres. It wants to promote all manner of indie content, including YouTubers and stuff like that. They're currently working on a series of alternative music. It will include a lot of steampunk bands. And but they're also looking for other content. So if you are an indie creator on YouTube or you make audiobooks or something, they might be interested in that. But to get to the point, she proposed to me today. I announced a writing challenge this month, which is the deadline 1st of May. Rules are on the blog. And she proposed, well, can we make the best 2 stories? Can we turn them into short films for a streaming service?
That would be really cool.
Yeah, it would. But I mean, I think this is this challenge is a tryout. For me.
Yeah, it's more about trying to get other people to start creating content inside your universe, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's short, it's to the point, and 2,000 word limits for that reason. Just see how that will work out, see if people enjoy it, and then you will even participate for that count. So we'll see. I mean, a number of people said they would, but if they will, that's a whole other story. We'll see what happens. So that's. I suggested to her, well, can we start with 2 of the existing stories instead?
Yeah.
And she said, well, we will chat about it this week, so we'll see how it will turn out and how she wants to do that. Because I definitely will be open for it. I was thinking of doing an audio drama with multiple voice actors and, have characters discuss the universe, so to speak. Kind of I guess, what if the Emperor,
interviews or something with different characters throughout it or something.
Yeah, well, or rather, characters discussing particular topics with one another. Maybe a fish out of water character getting acquainted with the association. A bit more lighthearted, a bit more on the humorous, comedic side. But yeah, we'll have to see, because again, I'm a one-man team and coordinating voice actors, writing, and editing.
That's a full production.
Yeah. So that's kind of my issue. I have all these ideas that I want to do, but
you have voice actors that you work with too, right?
Incidentally, for on my second channel, the Retrofuture Research Foundation, I did a video together with people of the Guns of Icarus community, which is a kind of steampunk themed airship battle game. Quite fun. I made a video with members of their community as voice actors, and some members of the steampunk community do costuming. And I mostly edited videos, and I mean, I'm very proud of that video, but it was a lot of work, and I said to those guys, I would love to make another one. However, I also had to write the lore, because it's one of those, well, like I said, people love building their world, but they don't have any stories set in them. So, when you are a writer, you get all these notes, and you're like, there's nothing here. It's just, facts and statements, but there is no lore. It's things that are in the writer's head, but, it's not formalized in any story. So it's, what information will you pick and choose? But, when somebody comes to you with an idea for, let's say, a city They will tell you about, I've got a city and I want this in there and that in there. And then ask them, okay, imagine I'm a character in that city and I wake up. What do I see?
Yeah.
And the answer will be crickets. Okay, well, next question. I get up, I'm hungry. Where do I do groceries? And again, crickets, because they have not, and that's the things you think about when you actually start writing your stories. Your character goes into the street. Well, what does he see?
Yeah. You want to be able to paint the picture of like what a character is actually envisioning and their surrounding environment. And
how they're interacting with it.
You use the senses that the character has in order to describe each, like everywhere around you, because that's how we are able to see reality itself.
Yeah. I mean, I describe world building as characters interacting with their environment for that reason, and especially that interaction. So it's not you describing a street; it's actually the character is doing something in that street. That makes it come alive. And and that's like the problem I had with that project. It was like I got all these notes and all these things, and it's like, well, it's statements and peoples, and it's like cliff notes, things you put on a website, like, well, this is that people. And as a writer, you're like, I cannot do anything with this, so I had to write that whole damn story. From beginning to end, and trying to imagine, where do the ships come from? How are they organized? How are these fleets organized? I had to make up a whole pirate faction. How are they work? Why did they do what they do? And all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I'm proud of the result, but I'm like, could be doing this for my own.
Yeah, that's extra stuff.
Yeah, like I could be doing this for my own, and that's also the problem why I proofread so little. It's like, well, yeah, I would love to help you, but it all detracts from my own stuff and my own work and time and energy to do. I have my own editing to do, and yeah.
So also, you were talking about the writing challenge you do. How might a writer begin a story inside your universe? And are there specific avenues that they can take to allow for like creative freedom without destroying the foundational lore that you've developed?
I created a blog. I think I linked it on the page where the challenge is on as well.
Okay.
That sets out some rules. I mean, the best way to start is, read one or two of the short stories. That would be a good start.
Yeah.
For the challenge, I also set as a rule, you start the story with esteemed members of the chair. So already gave them kind of like a going in point.
The intro.
Yeah, kind of an intro, esteemed members of the chair, and well, you go from there essentially. So there are, like I said, I built it, I made it a multiverse with the intention that people can, go on and create their own world side of it.
Yeah. And
there is one particular rule that's very important, which is that there is this phenomenon called Traveler's Bane, which if a person or object is away from its plane of origin, as these worlds are called by the association, they are destroyed. Humans get sick, items start to corrode and break down, and they don't know why this is. It's a big mystery. And there are some measures to counter that, but they are extremely rare.
So, for example, if a character from my universe were to like end up appearing inside your universe, they would start getting sick, kind of thing.
After about a period of 40 days, give or take, yes. And so and they literally start to fall apart. The current book I'm working on, the character is confronted with the consequences of going through that experience. So yeah, the effects are quite significant. And so that's a major rule. So the idea is that, you cannot go in with your 21st century army into a Stone Age world and just conquer it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the idea behind it, or have characters that have like all this super advanced technology from all these other worlds, and they are completely unbeatable anime-esque characters going through your cosmic horror stuff. I mean, when it comes to like real rules for like the exact world building, like of course the home world of the association has very particular rules where it's currently like somewhere in the 1870s, most stories. And when I communicate with my artists, I say, well, the characters need to look like 80% historically correct. And so the idea is that they are like historically 1870. However, their technology is about 1920s. True to stuff that occurs. It's one way of explaining why there are, for example, radios, so they can do audio interviews and stuff like that. So that's again that all combines with the whole Call Girl story. That's where that all comes from. And I mean, it is reading. Like, if you have questions, you can always talk to me. I did at one point start with kind of like a manual for associates. Like one important rule for the associates is that they are a organization of volunteers and they do not follow orders. Orders, English. So that's a very important. It's more of a philosophical rule, but
what is the main point of the associates? What do they specifically go to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, like I said, they are a volunteer organization. This is very important. They do not follow orders. They are completely independent. They don't even follow orders from their own organization. They are an association in the true sense of the word. And their job, currently started working on a story where they are discussing this with an outside party, is that their mission is to protect their world from mostly outside influences, but also from parties who seek to use outside technology to benefit their own, for their own benefit. Okay. So it's quite... in a way, they have a quite xenophobic position in that regard. However, they fight threats both within and without, and their mission is to protect their world, and it's not to go out and conquer other worlds. They go out and explore other worlds to serve for defensive purposes. So. When somebody would come to them, help us, destroy this party over there. And it's like, are they a threat? Well, if the answer is no, then they will not cooperate because it goes, they have this very, they've got they really set their limits to what they are allowed to do. However, when they say we're defending our world, it also includes, against people they deem too incompetent to do that task. So in some situations, they'll ask, I have yet to write such a story, but I intend to, where they really act as inquisitors, going against their so-called employers. Their official position is that they are advisors. That is how they describe themselves to outside parties. Oh, we're advising local authorities to deal with this problem. They don't tell you that they go out to other worlds to, discover this information, what they need to develop these countermeasures. Or, that they'll take out an officer if he refuses to do his job properly. So there's a lot of cloak and dagger stuff going on there, and there can be very pragmatic. I added one story already, P25, which is exploring their relationship with other parties, which is in this particular case RA, which is the Board of Rift-related activities. They are a kind of NATO-esque organization when it comes to, Rift-related activity.
And Rift-related activity is specifically what?
Oh, yeah, right. I did not tell about the Rift yet. So there's this multiverse, and the gates to other worlds are called rifts.
Okay.
And, many of these rifts go to worlds may not even be humans. There are feral worlds, so to speak. But they might lead to worlds that have, like, primitive civilizations. There might be worlds that have very advanced civilizations. And one of but there can also be, tears or rifts going into, the more unnameable domains, so to speak.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened in this world's history is Napoleon, who started bombing England with a version of the V2 rocket. And this kind of like made the Allies wonder where the hell did they find all this, where does this technology come from? Mm-hmm. Now, how the association really came to be is unknown at this point. I started writing stories that kind of like explore like where their past might be coming from.
Yeah, like you want to kind of leave it up to like just like the mystery aspect of it. You give like different points, like, oh, this might be where it came from, this might be where it came from, but kind of leave it in the air. Exactly.
I mean, it's one of those questions like, the question is interesting, but the answer is stupid, kind of deal. So, and you want to, but it also allows you a lot of freedom to connect certain short stories with others. But before I go on, like, is the story about the rifts clear before I go on another?
Oh, yeah. So, like, rifts are basically your way of going to different worlds throughout your multiverse kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. And then the problem is that it's a two-way connection. So
both worlds can intertwine with one another.
Yeah. And the particular dilemma that the Association of faces is that on their world there is an exceptional amount of rifts opening.
Okay.
So usually a world has like maybe a couple rifts, but for some reason the world of the Association of Ishtar's world is like a sieve.
Okay, so it really... and the association is on arcology. That's the main world, right? Or that's a city?
No,
that's a city.
The association discovered arcology.
Okay.
So the arcology is a bit interesting in that regard. It's a very unique place in the multiverse, but readers and people we talk to really enjoy the concept of arcology. Mm-hmm. So we'll probably do a couple of challenges in the future related to that. But it is like the origins of it are unknown. So when you are visiting World of Atlas, you'll notice a bell-shaped object floating in the sky. And this object reappeared because they have evidence that it had always been there, but it reappeared somewhere in the 18th century, before the French Revolution. And so that was a big like, what the hell, it just happened. Ever since then, of course, people have been trying to get there and see what this Elysium object, as it is called, is. Some believe it's the lost city of Atlantis, and et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Insert your random conspiracy theory there.
But it's in the sky?
And well, it looks like it's in the sky, but actually the World of Atlas has like this strange window into this pocket dimension, which is called the von Straub field. And the association, in collaboration with an old ally of Napoleon who developed the rockets, they manage to get there. Of course, they crash because it's its own universe. So, oops, gravity. And this is described in the archaeology reports, which is on the website.
Yeah.
And they discover the city of archaeology inside of this object. So it's a domed city, so to speak. And the next book also takes place there, where I fully explore like all the people who go there. Who, for those who want to know, there is a story called P12. It's called the White Zeppelin. And that White Zeppelin is some type of elder being or construct, something like that.
Cosmic being, like a cosmic horror or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's a video of it. Digital art. Probably one of the highest rated stories of the association right now. And one of the artists said, if I want to make a comic for this series, I wanna do that one. So maybe that will happen. I don't know yet, but so that White Zeppelin delivers refugees from worlds that have been destroyed. So this whole city is flooding with interdimensional refugees, so to speak, from all these lost civilizations. So it's also a city that is filled with people who don't speak each other's language, and it has all these vestiges of all these worlds, religions, and cultures that no longer exist. Mm-hmm. And it's also surrounded by cosmic horrors that also live inside the Elysium object. For that reason, the inhabitants also call that place Hades. So there you go. And that's where the next book is going to take place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I'm still very hard at work world building that. And on what life is like inside there.
And they also have like a bunch of. I remember listening to P12, and that it has like there's a bunch of contingencies for the cosmic abominations that come in. Can you explain a few of those of like a few of the problems that face archaeology, and how what's the significance of them in the wider scope of the universe?
One of them would be Dankert Lexicum himself. So yes, Radio Retrofuture is inside there. I think it is Subject 11 in the stories, which is Radio Retrofuture, and Dankert Lexicon is like S11-1. Who's running that place. And it basically sends these broadcasts into the multiverse, which can be received if radios have a particular signal, receiver crystal in there. But his main source of income is that he is a insurance broker. He insures world histories.
Oh.
So if you know that your world is facing a cataclysmic calamity, you can get that history insured and make sure it doesn't get lost. So, something remains.
That's definitely something that should have been inside my lore before I ended up completely wiping everyone's memories of full history. So
yeah. That's actually a very interesting concept now you say it. I definitely need to do something with that.
Yeah. I mean, it helps wipe away 16,000 years of lore that I don't have to write anymore. If there's a people in the world whose minds get erased, like in Storm, this happens. I don't know if you know that comic. The whole of humanity gets like conquered by an alien race, and then they instead of genociding humans, they wipe their minds, so they're back into the Stone Age. Oh, geez.
But yeah. And then Storm comes by, and he gives them the technology and blah blah blah. Anyway, but so that's definitely a story that we can write, and so that's that character, Dan Collection. He's the founder of Arcology. Why or how is yet unknown. However, I'm not going to spoil the next book, but the great dilemma for the scavengers and then the Kibs who live inside that city is that the city is never changing. It only changes by the kibble that keeps flowing in. All these people who have no idea where they're ending up. I mean, a lot of these people have not even seen the wheel before they end up in Arcology.
Wow.
It's one of those things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
So a lot of these people they are very good against the creatures who live there, because there are very experienced hunters who can do a lot with very improvised weapons, so to speak. So that's a thing, but you've got like people from futuristic societies in that city, and like literal cave dwellers.
That'd be a very chaotic place.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. So but humans are very intuitive and
adaptive.
I mean,
too.
So it's on one end it's like a horrible place, but on the other end it's like this place where humans still can thrive. Yeah. Among all these problems, and they manage to make the environment, which consists of these ecosystems that it's a very competitive ecosystem in there, even for the plants. So this is actually a thing that's happening in P25 where the association is fighting with Ra. That was what I was telling about, and they discover a vaccine for cancer. In Arcology.
Really?
Yeah, which is and it's made of various plants that grow there, which are in abundance there. And they're like, well, can't we not just import these plants, so we can have like an anti-cancer vaccine? Like we've got these problems with outsiders, as these invading creatures are called on Atlas. And one of them turned out to be highly radioactive, and now we've got a leukemia outbreak in a city. So they're like, can we not import these plants? And the association says no. The reason why not? Well, they're growing in Arcology. So if they can survive in Arcology, can you imagine what they'll do to Earth's ecosystem if they get free?
Yeah.
So the association...
it might be good for one group of people, but it would be very, very bad for another.
Well, that's also, that they say, like, okay, so you want us to believe you're going to distribute this cancer vaccine to everyone in the world?
Yeah.
So the association says no, and if Ra, which is a very powerful organization in this world, still insists to do so, then the association makes clear we will goddamn destroy you because you are allies. You're not our employers or masters or anything, because again, the association does not follow orders. So that's where that philosophy becomes very important. So that's things I explore story by story. That's a central part of my world building, how I see world building.
How do you handle morality? Like, is there a specific like organization inside your world that is like the good and then the bad, like the Jedi versus the Sith kind of thing, or do you really make it very nuanced in perspective?
Well, I explore it story by story, and it also depends on the characters. Like, I don't really have a main character in the short stories. They're all, I have recurring characters. In the last story I started, I decided to make a character recur because he had a certain experience that's relevant. But I mostly judge the moral from the perspective of the characters. Like, there are associates who are called lost numbers. They are basically the associates who, did not follow the principles of the association by, for example, aiding outside parties. Let's say that they aided a national government or something, or a rebellious, anarchists, so to speak, whatever. They are deemed lost numbers, and they will be hunted down. This is actually described in the first book, The Wrench in the Machine, where there is a character called Mr. Lotto, who is basically, he's not an associate, because the associates do have a certain distaste to kill other associates. So they have this assassin called Mr. Lotto, who does it for them, essentially.
Gun for hire.
Yeah, kind of. And yeah, Mr. Lotto also particular philosophy to what he's doing. His catchphrase is, of course, your number is up. So there are a lot of gray areas. Like I said, the goals of the association are very narrow when it comes to we're here to defend our world. That's our mission that we do voluntarily. We do not expect to get anything in return. And those who do seek to use whatever we find for their own gain, we destroy. Any party that breaks, that does so, let's say a national government starts trying to use certain technology for their own gain, the association will interfere with that, even if Ra does not like it.
Yeah.
Then again, Ra is kind of like a supervisor in that regard, because they do have accords that say that they're not allowed to do so. So Ra kind of supervises that, although it's more like the 19th century concert system to ensure that no nation becomes more powerful than the other. So there's a lot of pragmatism and politics going on there. So just like the
that's always fun.
The actual NATO.
Yeah.
And So and then I'm building it out story by story. And see where it goes, and sometimes I get to a dilemma and I'm not sure where I want to take it, so I let the story rest for a while until the solution hits me, and then I continue from there.
Work on other projects in the meantime.
Yeah, I've got a whole folder with God knows how many ideas. I'm so happy I found Scrivener, which allows me to order all these ideas into a single document. So, yesterday, I happened to be browsing all these ideas, and I were what was this idea again, and what was that idea? When did I come up with this?
Yeah, so, I know that. I know that feeling, especially when you're trying to you're building an entire multiverse on different levels. All by yourself, and you're trying to make sure that there's some continuity between all different stories that you're writing. That's how do you usually handle that with the continuity errors if one appears in one story? Do you have to go back and edit it, or do you try to find a way to kind of weave it through, make it work?
I play pretty loose with the canon in that regard. Every story kind of explores something else. Like I said, I have recurring characters, but no overall protagonists. And I really write them as separate stories and now I'm getting at the point that I am combining various things.
Yeah.
Which is the fun part of it, because
it is very fun.
I left a lot of things pretty open. When I write a story, I write them to be stories in their own right. However, when I allude to other things, it's you need to know this, but you don't need to know the details about it to enjoy this story. So there's a lot of open threads or things that can be explored at another time. That's how I write a lot of stories. I've got this faction here. I need a particular faction. This is how I came up with, for example, special committee entomologists. which are in truth the code name they use for the French Penal Legion. And I had like this idea for a experimental army that was also expendable. I kept referring to them, but I had no idea what they were like or how they operated. And that eventually led into the story that I included with my first comic, The Call Girl, which is called Lights in the Dark, which is about a pilot in the French Imperial Penal Legion. And she's controlling a robot, which they call Chassis de Bataille. They're French. And people really dig that. Dig that story. And I also got this great art for it by one of the original Battletech artists, Eldon Crowder, which is a great piece of work and really proud of having. But yeah, it's like I leave a lot of things open to be explored in their own stories.
Yeah.
And so it's I've got like one story, and that connects then to 3 later stories. So they build upon each other. And so the continuity comes from that process rather than I'm writing a parallel story and I refer randomly to something else, and that doesn't make sense. I mean, when I wrote the Wrench in the Machine, I started actually connecting various stories in a greater narrative. That's essentially what the Wrench in the Machine is. It's like, could these various entries in the short stories, can these be like put into a singular story? And that also led to the character of Igraine, who's one of the main characters, one of the viewpoint characters in the book, who was originally S06. And she is a girl from a very advanced society. However, in their society, they're taught that technology is magical. So she actually looks like an Art Deco little witch when she comes here.
Yeah. Got that nice hat.
Yeah. Have an Art Deco, like, roaring 20s hat. Yeah. That's right. And, she is, and she's my commentary on Clark Tech and steampunk. But, so, yeah. So she became, like, I needed... Because the Wrench in the Machine is really written for people who are completely new to the whole Association of Ishtar concept. So the character had to be a fish out of water, someone who has no knowledge of the multiverse or the Association of Ishtar. And so it's the whole world is seen from his perspective. And, he had heard of the Association of Ishtar, but he thought they were like kind of like the Freemasons or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the perspective of that book. And, the reader learns about the multiverse and the implications for that world through his eyes. And Igraine is introduced as kind of like, his gateway to that world. She explains, what's happening. I also mentioned Trevor's decay, which she is suffering from due to her own actions. And then she's, in the second book, she's, experienced the consequences of that. And, and so it was funny because when I wrote the story of S06, she cannot go home again, Igraine was really just this high concept of a character. However, it's a quite emotional story. It's really about this girl that is forsaken, that's sacrificed, essentially, because she made a mistake. A big mistake, but still. And, that leads to... however, she's also a pathological liar in that story. So the association also has to deal with that. And, of course, they also have to deal with the fact that, they want to send her back. However, they need to maintain worldview that, technology is magical and he's not allowed to come in contact with, any other idea. So, she's driving their scientists up the walls when she helps them, for example, reverse engineer technology, for example.
Wow.
And it needs to be done in this, and then she'll make like I don't know, like a print board, but it must be pentagram shaped or something stupid like that.
Oh yeah.
So, so because to her, though, those are ley lines and they need to arrange, to north to south or something, things like that. Mm-hmm. I have not yet explored the world where she came from herself. I'm still contemplating what that experience would be like. But that's going to be interesting when I actually start working on that.
So how many books are you writing currently?
Well, currently just one.
Just one. Is that a continuation of the Wrench in the Machine?
Yes, but it's in essence, it's a standalone story with some references to the Wrench in the Machine.
Okay.
A matter of fact, the idea is that we see a future Igraine at the beginning of the story, where she has become a associate. However, she is she represents the most stern, most. What's the word? The most. She represents a very dark aspect about the association, where she'll say things. Well, our job is not to protect people. Our job is to protect this world. So you get this. She's a consequentialist in that scene, where the ends justify the means. And this aggravates a lot of people, and she is called to the Raw headquarters, and there she will meet Albaro from the main character of the first book, and there she basically starts telling the story of her experience in arcology and her growing up there and learning to be responsible and that kind of thing. I'm still struggling a bit to get to the point where she becomes like a consequentialist.
Yeah.
But that might actually be something for another book, where that final piece falls into place. Because this really is about her life and then getting acquainted with being responsible for other people, and stuff like that.
Yeah, like so it's like trying to figure out a character's motivations before they've actually even gotten there in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, it's also for the people who, because I get a lot of people asking like, about arcology. People are very enthused about arcology. I mean, I get the idea that many people wouldn't mind if everything happened in arcology, in that regard.
Yeah.
And so that book really is an exploration of what is life like for the people there, as seen from somebody who is what they call a totok, a tourist. Essentially, who comes there just so they can leave again because everyone else is stuck there because of Travelers to Gay, for example.
Yeah.
So these are people that they have nowhere to go. If arcology is destroyed for whatever reason, that's it. There's literally nowhere in the multiverse for them to go. So. And we see that through her eyes, and also what makes her different from the people who are stuck there. It's quite an exploration. It's also why it's quite a struggle to what would this look like? What would that look like? Because everything is alien, and it's almost more science fiction than steampunk in that regard. Mm-hmm. But it has the themes of steampunk. And when it comes to arcology, I did create it to kind of like create kind of like a parody of the steampunk community in that regard, which is a strange assortment of pop culture and history. So there's that element as well. It's also the explanation for why there are so many Lovecraftian horrors surrounding it. Mm-hmm. and the idea of being outsiders.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the question was, but
No, I mean we went on a big tangent there, and I think that that was a good place to stop too. Do you have any? Go ahead and name off all the places that people can find you, all your books and all that stuff too.
So people can find me on Radio Retro on YouTube. We also have a website, the associationofishtar.com. There is a radio retrofuture.com, but I don't really do anything with that. So what else? You can find me as Bonsart Vocal or Radio Retrofuture on various platforms. I really should get all those names straight. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Minds, of course, and various other places. And my ebook is sold on most platforms. The physical copy you can only get at Amazon, I think, but you can also order it straight from me by sending me an email that's on the website.
And then the coloring book too. Is that out yet? Is the coloring book out yet?
The coloring book, no, not yet. I want to start a Kickstarter for that on my birthday. That's the 2nd of June.
Ooh, nice.
Then that will go live. Is the intent at least? So I'm curious when that will come out. I hope to have miniatures after this week of the call girl and one of the associates. In the book, and if people would buy some of those, I might make more models eventually. My hope is to have a game in a couple of years. I'm asking around for game devs or people who'd like to help with that.
What kind of game are you specifically trying to make?
Ideally, I would want one game that is fairly simple, so anyone can just play it. Something small like a card game.
Okay,
something I can easily sell on events.
Yeah.
And the other is, the eventual product that would include art from the first game, so to speak. This is the ideal situation. Would be like a board game, maybe something in the vein of Arkham Horror or something, but it also depends on the game dev that I encounter. I'm open to all possibilities. Some people have suggested, can you make a role-playing module for an existing system, which I'm also open to.
Well, there are definitely a lot of different modules that you could choose from too.
Yeah, I'll bet. So, it really depends on who I come across and then, who's crazy enough to pick up the idea. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I thank you for coming on here, Bonsart, and everyone check out Radio Retrofuture. I was also on his podcast as well, so you can go check that out. And there's a huge catalog of information. If you really like the storytelling that I do and the audiobook style podcasts, you'll really like what Bonsart is making over on his YouTube channel. He has a bunch of, he actually has voice actors other than just myself. He actually has voice actors, and the sound effects really make it feel like you're listening to the interviews going on inside his world. It's really great stuff that you're making.
Let's do one together sometime.
Oh yes, I would totally we could jump onto each other's podcasts and audiobooks and stuff. Sure, yeah. That would be fun.
Which short story? Because you read a couple of the short stories. Which short story would you recommend to the listeners?
I actually really like the B12 the P12 one with the
the White Zeppelin. Yeah, we already have an book of that one. Yeah, that, which I'm also really proud of.
That one's really good, and I really I forget which one it was. I was literally just binging them while I was at work because I'm a delivery driver. So I was just I just had my phone on and I just started listening to them.
Okay, yeah, ideal.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for coming on. I'll make sure that all the links are in the description, and yeah.
All right, awesome.
I thank you for listening to our conversation. If you'd like to hear more guest entries like this one, go over and become a free member at arthadiananthologies.com to not miss another episode like this. And if you're interested in becoming a guest yourself, you can fill out an entry form at the site's homepage. Until next time, travelers, be safe, stay safe, and if death comes to you, may you be reborn in power.